born in 1926 in Hobart, yes. My mother was working in the hop fields around Hobart. My father, as far as I know, started his bakery trade, and they decided to come to Devonport. And we came in on a motorbike and side car. I hadn't been there very long, my mother told me, when she saw a job advertised in Latrobe, Wells Bakery, Latrobe. We had our own home and life revolved around the bakehouse, and it was in the Depression years, and we had people knocking on our door for 6 pennyworth or 3 pennyworth of stale bread. The men didn't have work. The kids didn't have very much, but I was very fortunate. The house was provided, went along with the bakehouse job, and I had piano lessons. Home life was not the best. My mother and father fought and argued a lot, but well, we sort of got used to that way of life. I only went to the state school. I went to school with some of the Baldocs.
Oh. Yeah, General Baldock.
Yeah, his parents. I would have known his parents.
Okay.
And the members of his family quite well. Every Saturday night, my mother would give me, I think it was 1 shilling or 2 shillings, I can't remember, but I was sent to the local, well, we call it a delicatessen now, I don't know what we called it in those days, but I always bought half a dozen saveloys for 2 shillings. And one Saturday night, I had the saveloys in a paper bag, and I came up, we had one long main street in Latrobe, and I was coming home with the saveloys in the paper bag, and I was swinging them around and singing away at the top of my voice, coming up the street, and all of a sudden, as we were passing the railway yards, I was swinging the paper bag around, and out came the saveloys over the fence down into the railway yard, and I lost all the saveloys. I went down there trying to find them in the dark, but I couldn't. So I had to go home and report that I'd lost the saveloys. My mother was furious, because 2 shillings was a lot of money in those days. And I had to go back and ask for more saveloys, and the lady said, "But I just sold you some saveloys." I know, but I lost them. 10-year-old, I was often up at the pub. There were 3 pubs in Latrobe. The top, Peacock's, Lord's in the middle, and the bottom pub. And I was sent to the pubs to find my father and bring him home. They would put me on the hotel bar, and I would sing to all the men in the pub. Oh dear.
Yes.
When my mother was away, on a Saturday night, my father would invite all of his friends to the house, because when Mum was home, we would never have anybody come and visit. But as soon as Mum disappeared, we had the men in the men that he met with in the bar. We had them in our lounge room. We had quite a nice house. My mother was a very good housekeeper, and we had nice furniture. We had a nice home, and we had a lovely big fireplace, and they would all come and drink and sit around the fireplace, and I was there watching all this, usually sent to bed a bit later than usual, but I saw all the goings on. And if the cricket was on in England, we had a radio, and not too many people in Latrobe had radio, so they'd all come and we'd listen to the cricket. Every school holiday I would go either to Penguin, where there were lots of boy cousins. I'd go to Rocky Cape, that's down Stanley Way. Once again, there were 2 or 3 boy cousins down there. My uncle worked on the railways, and they used to have, I don't know what they call them, trolleys on the railway line. You worked the trolleys up and down, and the boys and I used to get on these trolleys, and because no trains on Sunday in Tasmania then, and we'd have a marvellous time up and down on the railway line on these things with who was there? There was Roy and Max and Rex. That's right, Fairbrother's down there in Rocky Cape. We had a wonderful time with those boys. There was a big tree, and we'd climb up this tree. Midnight, we used to have midnight suppers, because my aunt and uncle, he was the warden of the town, and they employed a cook, and I believe her name was Effie, and she'd cook all these cakes, and we would, at midnight, we'd take all this stuff down to this big tree. We'd sit up in the branches, or we'd be down on the ground. I had a wonderful time. But I remember my white pleated skirt. My mother had made it, but I went climbing trees with the boys and the 2 girls, and I ripped it. Oh dear. I've never forgotten the trouble I got into, because my mother was a good sewer, and she had made this lovely skirt, but I climbed a tree and tore it. Oh dear. Well, the war came, and that changed life completely. What was I, 14, 15? I'm not really sure. And of course all the boy cousins disappeared. The boys from Rocky Cape went into the Navy. All the boys at Penguin went into the Army. One of them went into the Air Force. They all disappeared, but every one of them came home. First of all, I worked for the local doctor, and he said to me one day, Aileen, there's a job going at the post office as they want to train telephonists. I think you should, there was an exam coming up. He said, I think you should sit for that exam and try and get the job as a telephonist. So I did as the doctor told me. I worked for Dr. Stevens. I used to answer the phone and do all sorts of funny little jobs for him. But anyway, I sat for the exam and I got the job. So I worked as a telephonist in the La Trobe post office. I was very active in the church. I think I was the church organist. I'd always been in the church, Sunday school, then Sunday school teacher, and as soon as, I think I was 14 when they placed me on the organ and the piano, so I decided that I would come to Melbourne. My mother had lots of relatives over here, my father too, and they said yes, they were very happy for me to come and stay with them. So that's what I did. So I stayed, first of all, Port Melbourne with an aunt, and I got a job with Kelly and Lewis out at Footscray, worked on the switchboard, and then Dot Cook, my cousin, suggested I come and live with her, which I did, and she lived in South Yarra, and then there I went to Spring Street Mission. There was another lass boarding with Dot Cook, Corrie Oliver.
Okay.
And she had a brother, Ray. And I remember he had a bike. And he used to double dink me down to the railway station to catch the train. And because when he came out of the army, he didn't have work to start off with. And there he'd be when I got home from work, and he'd double dink me on the bike back to Hardy Street, to Dot Cook's place where I was boarding. So that was how I met Ray. And I don't know, the romance seemed to blossom immediately, as soon as we met. And of course, 3 children came along. But Ray being a builder, we started off in a little tiny single-fronted cottage in Paran. I think it cost us $400, £400 it would have been in those days. Ray died in, what, 79? Yeah. He was only, what, 55 or something when he died. And I was a widow 5 or 6 years. And then I met and married Peter. What year were we married?
84.
84, yes. But I really have had a very fortunate life.
Yeah.
I've had every operation that anyone could possibly have. There can't be too much left inside me. But I seem to have survived them all, and here we are, what, nearly 85.